Welcome. In some denominations, you'd make a trip to the pastor's study for answers to the really tough questions. Well, let's see what we can do here. Merry meet, blessed be. Welcome to another session in a very different pastor's study. Depending on how you got here, I'm Aidan Odinson, High Priest of the Temple of Gaia, or Cal Lippitt, Bishop, Universal Episcopal Church. And I know what's on my mind right now, the government shutdown. A lot of functions have not been done. And one kind of bothers me. I really appreciate the fine work of the people at Snopes.com. I've even got their webpage up here as notes. Somebody started the rumor that President Obama ordered that any non-chaplain priest who says Mass during the shutdown will be arrested. No, he didn't. Actually, it was a warning put out by the legal counsel of the Roman Catholic Archdiocese for the Armed Forces. And it's based on the Anti-Deficiency Act, which dates back to 1870, which I believe is quite some time before President Obama was even born. And basically, it says here, it prohibits the federal government from incurring any monetary obligations for which Congress has not appropriated funds. And so, during the shutdown, a lot of so-called non-essential activities are trimmed down, and this also means, among other things, certain people don't get paid. Well, their attorney wisely pointed out that that would mean that any non-military priests, we're talking about contract or civil service, would not be allowed to say Mass on a military base. And pointed out correctly that any who did, even on a volunteer basis, could be subject to arrest. I'd love to see what the fallout from that would be. But that was the fact, and the House passed a resolution with only one dissenting vote allowing these non-chaplain priests and other clergy to perform services on military bases in spite of the shutdown. Now, why does this bother me? It's an issue that goes way back. You may know that I at one time I've always wanted the priesthood. And at one time I wanted very badly the priesthood, and I was prevented that because of a faction fight going on in the denomination I was in at the time. But now, that's not an issue. But back then, at an interview, a pre-admission interview, to see if I was qualified for admission to the seminary, one of the professors at the seminary asked me, there's going to be an oversupply of priests. There are going to be more priests than there are pulpits. How would you feel about that? And my answer was, I'd still be a priest, I'd still be able to minister, If I have to do something else to put something on the table for dinner, okay, but I'd still be a priest. Now, that was 1976 when I had that interview. Move forward a few years when the Church of England decided to admit women to the priesthood. They'd had deacons for some time, and they decided that women could be ordained as priests. And one of the women who was a deacon and was selected for the priesthood made a statement. I'm sure she would try to qualify it, etc., etc. But the fact is, here's what she said, quote, "We've got jobs. Excuse me, but anybody who looks to the priesthood as a job, I would question their qualification for the priesthood. Plain and simple. I may be hard-nosed about that, but I've known some wonderful clergy who had to do other things to get money, to earn a living. And I'm not talking just Wiccan. Well, in Wicca it's understood. Very few of us can make money doing what we're doing as priests or priestesses. No. And so we become doctors, lawyers, computer programmers, whatever else, warehouse workers, you name it, as a way to support family. Other denominations, other spiritual paths have had traditions where they kind of expected that priesthood would be full-time, and in exchange for that full-time there would be a stipend, otherwise known as a paycheck, to provide for living expenses, in most cases a family, that sort of thing. However, it's not a job. Oh, it's not a job. On the other hand, I think back to my days in the Air Force, at Ellsworth Air Force Base. And one of the events that I remember was when civil engineering housing maintenance was shut down and replaced with a contract company. Instead of civil servants going around in Air Force trucks, the contractors, people would come in their company vans to fix the plumbing and the electrical and whatever else needed working on in the base family housing. I'm sure that that's part of the shutdown that got shut down, and they may very well be furloughed. Well, no, they're just not being called. And right now, anybody who has a leaky faucet, clogged drain, or a light switch that won't cause the light to light up, or whatever else, they may have to see some other alternative. Well and good. We're talking about plumbers and electricians. Doctors, that's another matter. The doctor will have taken a Hippocratic oath and And those are men and women who are also under an oath. I can't think of a plumber or an electrician or a carpenter who's ever taken an oath or a vow, such as a priest or a doctor or other clergy. Now, what does this mean? Well, once again, just like that deacon who is approved for the priesthood, who had been held back only because of her gender, and she says, "We've got jobs." Well, somebody needs to recognize the nature of ministry, the nature of priesthood. And yeah, it's not like being an electrician or a factory worker. And I would hope that common sense would prevail. Clergy are clergy. I don't care if you're talking about, well, Mormons. That's not an issue for them any more than Wiccans, because you're talking about clergy that are historically never paid. But when you're talking about, if we get enough pagans and Wiccans to the point where we have a need for somebody to be full-time, or those denominations where there is full-time, and yes, there is an effort to have a Wiccan chaplain in the military, several of them as a matter of fact, and guess what? We've got to recognize the difference that exists between any other job and the jobs that are done under oath, under vows. And quite frankly, if I were in their shoes, if I were, for instance, a priest at Saint whatever's in whatever town, and I also had a contract to come out Sunday afternoons or Saturday evenings to the base, I'd still be coming out to the base. Why? Because I took a vow to do so. And I really worry when people can't seem to understand that. Okay, there are some things that other people worry about more than that, but this is something that bothers me. Because, well, my view of priesthood. Go look up, if you go into Google or just about anywhere else on a search engine, you can look up my essay, Priesthood as a State of Being. You'll find it on witchbox.com. And you'll see what I mean. And I just don't get it that so many people don't quite get it. Oh well. Here's hoping. At least some of us get it. I'm Aidan. Blessed be.
This has been a presentation of the Wise Ones Net. Merry part and blessed be.